make sure we kind of keep everything on schedule. We've got a lot to cover tonight, so excited about the big crowd. We were kind of taking bets on how many people would show up, and it's more than we thought, so that is good. I don't know if it's good or bad though. You have 3 engineers tonight giving presentations, but we'll try to keep it both informative and hopefully useful. So Scott Brunka, I'm the city manager. Ben Stuckey is our city engineer, and Sean Coffey is our director of electric. And so, as you know, kind of the purpose of this meeting is to focus on projects, infrastructure projects that the city has planned for this year. We are going to talk about some of the private development going on as well. We have some slides, information on the fairgrounds, kind of some of the other topics that I know are of interest within the community. We also have 4 council members here, so Councilmember Coe, Councilmember Lamro, Councilmember Eggers, and Vice Mayor Norris are all here. So we really appreciate folks coming out and showing interest in our community. So we're going to just kind of jump in, and I always like to kind of start with Lebanon's mission, vision, values. And our vision is to support a thriving and sustainable community that embraces opportunity, innovation, and authenticity. And kind of how we talk about that with staff is really through our values and how we do things. So our priorities are citizen service, collaboration, integrity, quality, stewardship, innovation, and communication. So hopefully, as you continue to kind of see the work that we're doing out in the community, these values will resonate. And this is very informal. So as, somebody asked if they could speak. We want questions. It's a question and answer session. So as we get into it, if you have a specific question about a topic, just raise your hand, and we'll be glad to answer any questions you have. But one of the things that I get asked a lot about is, the city's growth and development. And so, as an engineer, I always like to kind of look at numbers, right? So you can kind of see what Lebanon's population has done over the last 15 years. 15 years ago, we were at just over 20,000. This past year, our population was 21,743. Over the last 4 years, our population growth has averaged less than 1% a year. So we are a growing community, but I kind of describe it as slow and steady growth, and we like to think of it as managed growth within our community. There are a decent number of new residential units that have been approved by the city and are under construction. Most of these we'll talk about the actual developments here in a little bit, but you can see in the pipeline there are over, we call it roughly 1,500 units that are either under construction or are planned for construction. So I think you will see that growth, spike up a bit. But all of the growth that you're seeing in our community is included in our comprehensive plan. So if you go on the city's website, go to the planning department, we did a comprehensive plan several years ago that identified what the future growth areas for Lebanon are and how to plan for that. And a lot of these projects that you're now seeing move into construction were contemplated within that planning document. Also talk a little bit about kind of the assessed valuation or property valuations within Lebanon. That we have seen a significant amount of growth in, 35% increase over the last 4 years. That's a combination of a couple things. One is the county auditor, who's responsible for the valuations. Obviously, that's increased, but it also reflects non-residential investment in our community that's also, positively impacting our valuations, and that helps the school district, right? The school district is primarily funded through property taxes. For Lebanon, it's primarily the income tax. It's the job creation that's important for us. So looking at our earnings tax, our income tax, we've had very good growth in our income tax collections over the last, really the last 10 years. And that's a good thing because this is what funds your police services. This is what funds your infrastructure like roads, parks, things like that. And I think it's a sign of a community that's, financially healthy. So in 2024, you see a pretty big spike of 35%. That reflects the voter-approved 0.5% income tax increase. That was approved by the voters to help fund our fire department. With that 0.5% income tax increase, we did a 3 mil reduction in your property taxes. So it was a little bit of a shifting to fund our fire department off the income tax and try to get off of the property tax, which I think we were a couple years ahead of the curve, because that's a lot of folks are kind of looking at the model that we did several years ago and replicating it. But last year we had a solid 11% growth in our income tax. Again, this is what puts police officers on the street. So any questions about that before we kind of get into specific projects? Okay, so let's just kind of recap some projects that we finished up last year that I'm sure you guys kind of saw as you were going through town. And we'll really hit on each one of these. So the Bowman Trail, it's a new bike path that is on the kind of the east side of Lebanon, connects the Countryside Y Trail up to Monroe Road. Goes through primarily through park property that the city had already owned. So it's a nice addition to our trail system and kind of further progresses our goals of connecting different neighborhoods to a trail system and ultimately kind of creating a loop through and around the city. That project was partially supported with a $1.2 million grant, and that's just kind of an aerial view of it as you see kind of Main Street there, and then the trail actually runs along Bypass 48. Park Avenue reconstruction, kind of see on the left the before and then the after. We've got not a lot, but we've got quite a few streets in Lebanon that either don't have standard curb and gutter drainage systems or just kind of lack, the more robust infrastructure. So when we see streets like Park Avenue, we try not to just kind of put an 1.5 inch layer of asphalt on it and call it a day, but we really try to get in there and fix it right. So you can see the finished product on the right, which includes curb and gutter, a drainage, a storm sewer system, and kind of what's more of our traditional construction. Yes?
This picture doesn't show the part that it's crooked. Are we having the contractors fix those parts?
I know there's cracking sidewalk. They are coming back to fix that. So obviously it's still under retainage. We haven't accepted the completed work yet. So they will be replacing cracking sidewalk. Crooked, I'd be glad to meet you out there. I don't know if there's...
So the curve does not go straight. It goes
okay.
Very curved.
I can look at that, yeah. But yeah, the cracked concrete, I'm not sure if it's, on the, whether or not the curve is straight, if it's off a little bit or not, but we can definitely take a look at that. Kingsview Drive Bridge, this is probably a project that you didn't notice, but it's an important one down in our business park. So we replaced the bridge that goes over the creek there. It's a $2 million complete bridge replacement. We got a $2 million grant to essentially fully support this bridge. It's an important piece of infrastructure within our business park. You can kind of see what the finished product looks like. This is one I'm sure you all saw, the North Broadway reconstruction project. The total investment in that project was over $6 million. So I get asked a lot, well, why is it taking so long? The entire water main was replaced, storm sewer system underground was installed. Obviously, all the concrete was removed and replaced, the majority of it. So it was a big project, and it also included getting the bike lane off of the road and as a separate multi-use path going all the way up to Miller Road. So over $6 million when you factor in all the utilities, the road. We were able to secure $1.75 million in grant funding to help support it. So again, kind of the before photos on the left and the after photos on the right. You can kind of see how the bike lane was obviously taken out of the pavement and separate multi-use path as shown. Yes? Okay. Oh, go ahead.
My question is, the where New Street comes down into Broadway right there, that the road dead ends into that, it's really very narrow. So if someone's coming up Broadway and they turn onto New, they literally have to kind of go over to the other one to make that turn. And I don't know about curbs or anything like that, but it seems like the curbs are a little bit too much into the road where they could, like I said, I'm not an engineer, I'm not in construction or anything like that, but I just know that the other day a gentleman I was going out and he was coming in, and it was like, granted there was snow there, but it was kind of tight, him turning in, and that's my question is that something you guys can look at, because it just seems like it's a little tight there, and I don't know if the road narrowed or what, but it just seems like it's not enough girth or whatever for when you're turning onto you almost have to take that lane and then the other partial of the other lane just to make a successful turn.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's a standard width. I think if I remember correctly, New Street used to only be kind of one way as you came onto Broadway.
Correct.
So we widened it to accommodate two-way traffic at that intersection. So I know it's our standard width from a roadway design standpoint. So yeah, but I mean, we can look at it, but I'm sure it was built to kind of typical standards. Again, kind of some before and after photos of Broadway. So let's talk a little bit of, yeah.
Real quick on North Broadway, when will they put the final coat?
Good point, yeah. So right now, it's the intermediate asphalt that's been put down. In the spring, once the temperature gets to the point where we can lay the final surface course of asphalt, that'll be done. It really is kind of temperature dependent, but I would anticipate March, April timeframe. A, when the asphalt plants open back up, and then B, the pavement temperature has to meet ODOT standards for us to put it down. But that is kind of that final piece of the puzzle on North Broadway. Yep.
Going back to the Park Avenue line, so I use that alleyway, I don't live on Park Avenue, but the people who use it for their parking, they used to park in their grass, and now you guys have curbs up, so now they're parking in the street. So now getting out of the alley and getting into the alley from Park is extremely hard because their cars are all right there.
Okay. I know.
So I don't know why their parking spaces were taken away and then
Well, I think, yeah.
non-parking was not addressed.
Yeah, part of it, we widened the pavement so you can see what the pavement width used to be versus what it is. So obviously the intent is for them to park on the street, which is what they're doing.
Okay.
If there's some sight distance issues at the alley, we have run into that in other locations where we designated a certain distance on each side of the alley as no parking. So we can look at that. So that might be the solution. Yep. So 2026 road improvement program. So we have a little over $11 million programmed into this year's budget for our roadway related infrastructure. The major projects that you're going to see move into construction later this year is the reconstruction of Meadow Lane and Suncrest. And most of these projects, it's not just the road reconstruction, but it's also replacing kind of the old pipes and the old utilities underground. When we come in and do a road, we try to get it all done at the same time. So it's a $3 million project that does include utility replacements. Really the same story for Cedar Lane, roadway reconstruction. We've got a very robust just resurfacing and concrete program this year, and I know Ben's going to talk about what streets we're going to be focused on, but $7 million investment in just the paving and the concrete replacement. And then we are going to be doing some widening and some improvements along Mason Morrow Millgrove Road, kind of on the southern edge of our town. I always like to kind of share this information just to kind of put in perspective how much road improvement work we're doing right now, kind of compared to where we were. We're averaging over $10 million a year in roadway improvements for the last really 2-3 years. You can kind of see how that's built up over the last 10 years. Fixing our roads has been a priority of City Council, and they've invested a lot of money into getting these roads in better shape. And I know Ben's going to share some information on the progress we're making there. But it's an area, it's been a focus area, continue to be a focus area over the next 5 years, is making those investments in our roadway infrastructure.
Mr. Bronco, will Ben be talking about the third-party study that we...
Yeah, Ben's going to talk about the condition rating, yep. So miscellaneous projects, so we are in the right-of-way acquisition phase for the widening of State Route 63 on the west side of Lebanon. We'll talk a little bit about that. We are planning on doing a parking expansion and installing kind of a bouldering play area out in Miller Park. We do have kind of a placeholder in our budget for a splash park. Haven't really got definitive plans on where or what, but we are looking at that project. We do a lot of small business economic development incentive support. That's something that Lebanon very much values, is our small businesses, whether they're downtown or on Columbus Avenue. So we budget about $100,000 every year to support kind of matching grants to small businesses to just help them. We're going to talk about the fairgrounds property. Obviously, we have budgeted money this year to do facility improvements out there if the city is able to purchase the property. A little over $1.5 million of water main replacements. Most of that is tied to our roadway projects. And then one thing that the city's been doing for a number of years is establishing and funding what we call reserve funds. So we know when we go out and build trails, we know when we go out and build a new park, that's going to require ongoing maintenance. So every year in the city budget, we set aside money in these reserve funds for future maintenance expenses. So we have a reserve fund for our trail system, for our parks, for fire equipment. We know that the life of an ambulance or a ladder truck is only so long, so we know we need to be saving money now so that we can purchase a ladder truck without having to borrow money. We are doing the same thing with our police facility right now. We've been saving money knowing that our police department has a need for a new facility. So that's something that has been happening in the city for a number of years, and I think just kind of shows, generally speaking, good planning. And this year's budget does include $1.5 million in grant support from various sources.
I have a question.
Yes.
You skipped over the sewer force main. Can
Yeah.
you define what that means and what that is?
Yeah, good question. So we have Gloucester Road Pump Station. I don't know if you're familiar with Gloucester Road. There's a sewer pump station. So most of Lebanon, or everything kind of north of Turtle Creek Union Road, which is where Home Depot is, most of Lebanon, the sewer flows into the Gloucester Road Pump Station. From there, there's a 20-inch sewer force main that runs all the way down to our wastewater treatment plant, which is basically in South Lebanon. So why it was built like that in the 80s, probably not a good idea. But we know at some point that sewer force main is going to need to be replaced. So we're kind of setting aside money now for that future project. Yep. And if you ever want a tour of our sewer plant, they love giving tours to the public. So just call. It's up on a hill down in South Lebanon. Nobody knows it's there. But, yeah. Grant revenue. So grants are a big part of how we, how we budget and how we do things here. And you can kind of see the history of grants and how important they are to the services that we provide. Ben, I think this is you. Yeah. So you want to talk about Councilmember Cook's question?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
So, like Scott said, if you have questions or anything, please raise your hand or cut me off. I'll be glad to stop and answer. But when it comes to our roads, like the Councilmember mentioned earlier, we have an independent party every 3 years that go out and they evaluate every segment of roads, of intersection to intersection, 100% of the city, and give it a PCR rating, pavement condition rating, on a scale of 0 to 100, and then break down from there anything over 70 to 100 is considered a good road. I think 30 to 70 is fair, and less than 30 is considered poor. And we use that each year to kind of determine our resurfacing program, why we're picking these roads. It's not, willy-nilly here, we're not any favorites or anything like that. We're using this to determine which roads need to be hit in a priority manner, kind of based on this rating, with some other factors based on the utilities in the ground, trying to pair alike roads, alike neighborhoods, things like that, to then determine what sections we're hitting each year with kind of given capital that we have. So in 2013, we had 50% of our roads were considered in good condition, so to speak, and currently we're over 70%, which is a great indicator of kind of the value and investment we're putting into these roads. I know the guy who did it said that's the highest jump he's ever seen since he's been doing it with this company. And so I think altogether we're very, very pleased with that.
I've got a question.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
what is what you saying criteria? Can you be a little bit?
Yeah, it's a lot of things. I mean, it's cracking. It's it's the depth of the cracking, the width. It's the amount. It's the potholes. It's time too, because roads typically, if you're resurfacing, have about a 15-year lifespan is what they average. Some may last longer than that. Some may fall short of that. So it's time from the last thing. A lot of it is too visual. I mean, they're going out visually, they're taking notes, taking pictures. So it's not necessarily an exact science, but it's a lot of things that are put into this. So this is our standard detail for what we do when we do when we go through and fix these roads. If we're going through, like I said, on the resurfacing program, we're just taking, we're milling off the top 3 inches. So that'd be the surface course mostly, and then depending on, again, the condition of the road. Yes.
Fancy
That
that.
is very fancy.
Yeah, hold it down. Okay.
It's not a big deal. So,
It's the top one.
thank you. Yes, so if we're just resurfacing the road, we're coming in, we're taking that surface course, that green, and we're just taking off 1.5 inches of it and putting it back. And that's, fixing smaller cracks, things like that. But if you see these large potholes and things, we're coming through and we're having to fix all the way down to this gravel-based section, which obviously is a lot more expensive, time-consuming, and adds up. So we try as much as possible to just fix intermediate surface. It's about, I'd say, 6 times more expensive if you're having to fix this whole section versus the top 3 inches, which is kind of shows based on just the ratio of this is an easy kind of way to look at it. But when we reconstruct a road, all of this is being torn out all the way down to the subgrade, and then we're completely flattening the subgrade, coming through, rolling it, and then building it back up from there. But again, that difference is, it amounts to about 6 times in cost. So there's a very fine line trying to find out what exactly you need to do, how far you need to go. You can, if we can, compromise and do the spot fixes, just the areas that needed are getting the full depth replacement in those sections. This next slide, I think this is my favorite slide because it shows it's 5 years before. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So does the cost of having that company come out, does that pay for itself in finding the cracks, or?
Yes.
I don't know how much that we pay that company.
So it's every 3 years, and I think we pay them, it's around $30,000 to $40,000 for a 3-year period, and they come back every 3 years. I think it's very valuable information. It's well worth it. It's a lot of time. Like I said, they're literally going from intersection to intersection, every roadway segment, providing us, it's thousands and thousands of data points. And,
Thank you.
absolutely helps us in planning. Yes.
I have a follow-up question.
Sure.
If that company does that every 3 years, why is your data from 2013, and it doesn't show you a more accurate picture from the captures from the past 3 years, 3 years, 3 years? I mean, I get it, and for effect, that's very helpful to see how it's improved, but 13 years feels like an ambiguous timeframe.
I think that's a fair point. I think that's more just kind of looking at it in a longer term.
We last did it in 2023.
Correct.
If you go back to the chart, the numbers, the current is 2023, so we had not been doing it up to that point, and then we started in 2023, and we've got budgeted to do it again this year.
Okay.
So this is a capture of 2020 streets through 2030. So the previous 5 years we've already done, and then it's forecasting the next 5 years. And I mean, as you can see, there's a lot of color on this picture. I mean, we are hitting a significant portion of the roads within the city in a 10-year period. It's very, very vast program. It's broken down. I mean, you can look at it for a while, or kind of hit it from a larger standpoint. Just each color is each year we've hit. So like pink this year was the countryside neighborhood. That was this year's resurfacing program. Next year I'll get into more, but it's going to be the Carson Drive neighborhood, kind of heading back into the Cedarwood section. So yes, next year for resurfacing, it's Carson Drive, which is Lake Bluff, Lake Forest, Wildwood. Those streets are actually they're concrete streets overlaid with asphalt, which is one of the last few remaining streets in Lebanon that are concrete. So when Scott said it's about $6-7 million this year, that is because of these streets. It's not as simple as just milling off the top layer and going in. We're calling full depth replacement. It's rubbleization, so they're going through and grinding up all that concrete. It's about 9 inches of concrete, and then using that as a base to then put the new asphalt on top of. It's the first time I think we've done that here. If I'm correct, yes. So I'm pretty excited for it. It should turn out very well. Other streets will be Monroe Road. It's kind of from Horseshoe Falls up to North Broadway project. There will also be a connector path that's picking up that 10-foot shared use path and connecting it into the new Broadway trail network. Kingsview Drive from the bypass to Hinkle. This area's it's been very problematic, and our streets department has been out there significantly this year repairing areas, and I know in the past they've had a lot of work on that. McKinley, down in the business park, Mound Street, which is an area of significant need. We get a lot of concerns on that street. And Deerfield Road, we've got funding through the state for that, and that'll be right to East Street, and Kearns Drive, and Edmund Court as well. Gloucester Road improvements. This is a project that is ongoing. If you've driven out there, you've seen it. Gloucester's closed between 42 and Main Street. They're starting utility work. They've installed a lot of storm sewer, and been temporary shutdown due to some of this weather going on. The big part of this project, though, is what is pictured right here, is the roundabout that is going in on the intersection. This will be our first roundabout, so very excited for that. With that comes a 90-day closure on US 42 for the installation of this roundabout. We're looking at summer to do that, so it'll be May, towards mid-May to end of May, starting that closure, and then 90-day maximum, which we do acknowledge is going to be inconvenient, but with some of the detour routes for trucking, that'll be 741 to Main Street, but then local traffic, McClure can use, and West Street to get around. Any questions on the roundabout? You get quite a few on that.
Across the road between 42 and 63.
Yes, sir.
Signal lane.
Yes,
How many lanes?
it'll be 3 lanes, so 1 in each direction and then a middle turn lane.
Is there any future looking at bypass?
A bypass in terms of,
Get the traffic off of Main Street?
Yeah.
Do you want to speak on that?
Yeah, I've been there. Yeah. So improving Gloucester Road from Cincinnati Avenue, kind of down to Turtwick Union Road, that is on the city's thoroughfare plan. The challenge is that's really, none of that's in our jurisdiction. So for that project to move forward, it would require the support of the township and the county, which at this point, it has not been a priority. Kind of the grand vision of a Lebanon bypass, that went through a vetting process through OKI, who's kind of the regional planning organization that allocates federal funds and identifies large projects. And that project did not make it through their process years ago. So there are no plans for a Lebanon bypass. The county engineer's office has initiated this year what they're calling a Northern Warren County Transportation Study, and that's the goal of the study, is to kind of look at really from State Route 63, between the interstates up into Springboro, look at the traffic flow, the truck movement, and try to identify projects to address it. But they've been very honest that there's no magic solution.
Has Lebanon thought of changing the light system?
So we are going to be reducing the speed. So part of
Reduce the what?
the speed limit. So
I don't
on
think speed
63.
limit has anything to do with it.
Yeah.
You change the lights where you have a long green going east and west on Main Street.
Yeah.
It stays the same at night. You can sit there at red light forever with no traffic at night.
Yeah.
I just go ahead and go.
Yeah. We do have federal funding to do some signal improvements along State Route 63, and then there's also going to be some traffic signals added out towards Parkside. So, again, to answer your question, we are looking at, signal improvements along that corridor. They shouldn't, they all have, they all have, interdiction, yeah. So that shouldn't be happening, which makes me wonder if sometimes the traffic loops aren't activating or working
It
properly.
seems like it stays on forever.
Okay, yeah, we can look at that. I know we had that issue, I think, on West Street, but, yeah, but we'll look at that. But we are looking at traffic signal timing along that corridor. We're looking at traffic signal timing right outside this building, down to East Street, so.
Because I know at rush hour, I avoid coming in.
Yeah.
It just,
Yeah, it's a tough, the solution is a little bit outside of Lebanon's control, because the reality is State Route 63 is a direct connection between 2 interstates, and there's,
the light they're putting up with the bike path crossing right in front of the armory. How's that going to work?
It's only actuated if somebody, it's pedestrian actuated. You want to talk about that?
so similar to some of our downtown crossings, pedestrian crossings, you have to go push a button that will activate it. The difference is this is.
Because I can see that being a disaster happening right there.
Yeah.
You get a semi coming down through there and somebody pushes that and start out.
So, like we have what we call an RFB right outside here, kind of on the corner of Mechanic, that has similar concerns. So this one, it'll be a mast arm that extends all the way across Main Street that will flash red, so much more in your face when you're driving.
So if somebody's riding the back path during rush hour, traffic's going to get backed up even more.
Yeah, it'd be similar to a signal is what it's going to look like. So if somebody pushes it and people will temporarily stop for 15, 30 seconds, whatever it may be for them to cross, yes. Any other questions? Getting in, segue into what you're talking about is the 63 widening coming up. So kind of 3 sections, future sections that are going to happen. We saw, I'm sure most of you have seen what's happened on the county's portion west of 741 with what they just finished widening. And coming into the city, we have our section, City of Lebanon funded, which will be from Neil Armstrong Way to the limits of the Parkside development. That's that area in blue right there. So that will be a 2027 construction project starting in the summer of 2027. I mentioned Gloucester Road's our first roundabout. This will be our second roundabout going in there at the intersection of Marquee Road. I think, yes, this is a schematic drawing, kind of realigning Marquee Road with a three-leg roundabout, kind of a fourth into the property right there as well. Like I said, that'll be underway. And
So that's going to be 2 lanes, both directions, and a roundabout?
so it'll be 1 lane going into the roundabout in each direction. And then,
That will be big enough for semis?
yes, that has been designed for the semi-truck traffic. And then, so the Parkside development has to widen 63 as part of all the houses that they're putting in. That, I think, is going to be taking place this year towards summer into fall. Same thing, widening to 3 lanes. They'll have traffic signals going in at their entryways into the development there. So between the new signals and the roundabout, the goal is to slow traffic down as much as possible into the city. Understanding, like Scott said, that 63 is used as a connector. Yes,
So
ma'am.
is there any plan in the future to expand the other half where it turns into 123? Because if you got 4 lanes going in and you're gonna get to downtown, then what? Like,
So-
expanding into 71? Because if that traffic is mostly through traffic, then you're down to 2 lanes. That's gonna like really,
Bottleneck, essentially, is what you're saying.
I'm asking, is there any
So from-
plan anywhere, like they're spinning from
I think
75?
It's
to
3 lanes, so it'll be 1 lane in each direction with a middle turn lane. So the
Okay, I'm
goal,
sorry. But is there any plan to take from downtown Lebanon out to 71 in the future and make that 3 lanes?
we have,
Yeah, so that gets out of Lebanon's jurisdiction, so,
But you work with those
Right,
parties,
so-
so have you heard of it?
no, yeah, so at this point, I've not heard, that would be a county project, ODOT county project, and I have not heard of any plans that they have currently to, widen it. Obviously, you've got the S curve there that frankly needs fixed. So I've not heard of any plans, but that's not in our jurisdiction.
And I would add, we even talked to them when the city, or the county engineer was in, so the part in orange right there, they're not planning on widening that. The
Okay.
county's not. So it's outside of our jurisdiction, that's county road, from
Okay.
741 to Parkside Development.
Oh, interesting.
So,
So it's gonna be narrow and
Well,
big.
3 lanes out there, right?
no,
Corvette.
that's for the future.
Oh,
But, so in the justification was, because we asked, why aren't you widening that? And justification is, when that Union Village area gets developed, it's the developer's responsibility to widen it. So why would they spend the county money and taxes to widen it?
that's like her question, I can't say I'm widen it when you got a bottleneck right there in the whole district.
Well, I think that's why we made a decision to only widen State Route 63 to 3 lanes. Obviously, the county, it's 5 lanes coming into 741. The thought process is there's going to be a bottleneck. It's not getting wider than 3 lanes through downtown Lebanon. So if there's going to be a quote bottleneck, have it out at 741. I think the best way to try to address some of the traffic concerns on 63 is to make it more convenient for them to get somewhere else, right? So that's kind of the thought process, and why you don't see a 5-lane, roadway coming into Lebanon.
I think also, that's one of the thoughts behind the roundabout and then slowing the speed down is to try to get some of that traffic off of 63 and discourage some of those truckers. To the best of our ability.
Yeah.
any other questions on
Saying too much.
63? Suncrest Meadow, this is a local road project. A couple pictures of the existing road conditions. There's no sidewalk in this section either, as you can kind of see in these pictures. So something that we'll bring up to our standards. We are only putting it on one side. I think that was some resident feedback as well as just right-of-way constraints we had in this area.
Will you have a owner and resident meeting out there like you've done?
So we tried to have one early and we had nobody show up to it. So once we get a little farther and have a contractor on board, we'll have another one kind of on site with them. Again, if nobody shows up, we want them to show up because we want their feedback on this.
I didn't get a notice.
You didn't get a notice?
No.
Maybe
I'll be there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
We had one in December here.
no, anybody that's listening to me talk about that, I've called Forest Road in Lebanon, so.
Yes.
I'm very excited to have that one taken care of. I'm interested in sidewalk placement and some other things.
Yep. So sidewalk will be on the south side of Suncrest and then the east side of Meadow, if that makes sense. So on that upper screen, the bottom, and then the right side of the yellow line. Do you want to talk about this?
Yeah. So a couple of other kind of projects. Stay up here. We completed what's called a SS4A study last year, which is a Safe Streets for All transportation study. And there were some community surveys, feedback, evaluating traffic accidents. And the goal of this study was to prioritize major road improvements for the city to focus on moving forward. And I want to share these slides because these two locations are kind of where we're focused on in terms of what's next. There's no funding involved at this place, so it's not a project in the sense that it's moving into design, but we are actively looking for grant funding to improve the intersection of Columbus Avenue, bypass 48 Miller Road. We are looking at doing a roundabout at that location as well. The traffic engineering preliminary evaluation kind of came back as that being the best recommendation to alleviate some of the congestion at that intersection. And then bypass 48, the exit ramps there, and Main Street. That's another focus area for the city. And so we are, like I said, actively pursuing grant funding. These are big projects, $5 million plus projects. So for us to be able to do that, it needs to be a combination of local funds and state and federal funding as well. But we are obviously focused on that. And then also some more minor improvements that we're looking to integrate along bypass 48 Cook Road and kind of Bird Avenue. They also made some recommendations downtown with regards to pedestrian safety to convert some of our intersections into four-way stops. So you'll see that happen later this spring, kind of on Silver Street there is primarily where that's at.
Scott, I know trying to get across the bypass in both of those sections has been something we've looked at in the past and have always been shot down.
Right.
Has there been any progress on that?
No, so
pedestrians?
yeah, bypass 48 it's called a limited access right of way, which is managed by ODOT. So they do not allow pedestrian or cyclists to cross bypass 48 or to be on it. So the only, really the only solution is to go above or under, and we don't have any sort of active project at this point. We kind of did a little bit of a roundabout way using the Troker Canyon Road Bridge and integrating a bike lane there. So it is a project that's kind of on our radar, but it's not within our 5-year plan. That's it. So kind of move into the Parks project and then talk about some of the development. So again, our big park project this year is to do some improvements out of Miller Park. It's a well-used park. If you haven't been there, encourage folks to go out and explore it. It's about 100 acres total. But there's kind of a nature playscape area in the park that's aged. So what we're looking at doing is kind of in this area, doing kind of a climbing kids bouldering area. And then also expanding parking. So right now, this is the parking lot. There's a welcome center restroom over here. That parking lot gets full quite a bit, especially when there's different events out there. So we're going to be doing some improvements within Miller Park. Should be good. Yes.
For the Miller Park, I love Miller Park, I think it's a great space. For the natural playscape, have you guys talked to Armco Park? So Armco Park took their own resources and made their own playscapes stuff. They didn't pay a company for all the plastic stuff.
Yeah, so we will still have some of that playscape stuff, so if you go out there's like some logs and stuff like that. The climbing bouldering area, it is more of like a pre-manufactured, but it's a little bit more than just a playground. So, part of what's driving this process or this project is the fact that the natural playscape, it's wood, it deteriorates, it doesn't hold up long term. So there will be still some elements of that out there, but we think kind of having this bouldering play area will be unique and something that folks are excited about. I will say the Miller Park Trust, so that's kind of a group of the Miller family and local residents that raise money for Miller Park. They are helping to fund the project as well. Sean, so electric utility.
As you can see, Scott has a requirement for all of his engineers to be over 6 feet.
Yeah.
I'm going to just step back a moment to probably help everyone understand, we're the electric utility here. And one of the things that we do is, obviously we go out and get a supply of electricity to serve all the residents and businesses here in Lebanon. So on the supply side for us, there's been some major economic changes in that over the last probably 5 to 10 years. And the way we pay for supply is we pay for the energy, it's being produced, plus we pay to get it transported here locally to serve Lebanon. And in our world, that transportation is called transmission, and they use some other fancy words for it. Well, that transportation cost over the last 5 to 7 years has dramatically gone up. A lot of it is because a lot of the supplies, the power plants, there used to be 3 power plants down on the Ohio River that are no longer there. So now the new sources are all throughout the grid and typically have to travel a lot further to get to Lebanon. So our transportation costs have gone up dramatically. It used to be 5 to 7% of our cost. Today it's about 1/3. So the city started looking at that and trying to figure out ways to reduce that impact. One way that we can do that is to get some internal sources to help to supply our need. So one of the first things that we did back in 23, and it was constructed in 24, was we built what's called a utility solar array. Actually built it in 3 areas. Where's your fancy? Is this your fancy pointer?
The top button.
Top button. All right, so most of you probably have seen it out on Gloucester Road behind the new substation that we constructed. That's one part of the field. And then the second one is behind the Black Barn. So most people probably don't really see it. They see something back there out in the field, but they probably really don't know what it is. And then the third one, what we call our western array, is over here back behind Cardinal, back in the field there. And it's a fairly good size utility solar array. It's about 10 megawatts. And it supplies about 3% of the city's current needs. So we got it fully constructed at the end of 24. So we really have about a full year of production out of it. So last year we produced 11,400 megawatt hours. Megawatts in our world is much like gallons in the water world, except these are millions of watts. And that's enough to supply about 1,000 Lebanon homes for the entire year, just to give you some idea. And it helped us to avoid about $750,000 worth of purchase of that energy out in the market. So that's one benefit. The other benefit is it saved us this year about $300,000 in those transportation costs. And not only is it high right now, but those transportation costs are continuing to go up over the next couple of years. We can already see that the way they're done. Because the way all customers are charged, that transportation charge, they look at what the city's peak electric load is at the same time the grid peaks. So that's where this is very beneficial, because typically it's in the middle of the afternoon, sun is shining in the summer. So this is the way we can reduce our demand during that time. So that's the reason we're able to save that money, is it's reducing our overall demand. Yes, sir?
What was the installation cost?
The total cost was about $13.4 million. We received about a $4 million grant from the federal government. So the city cost was $9.4 million, roughly. And I noticed in your grant slide, you didn't include that.
We did not, yeah, that was kind of a tax credit grant, so.
Yeah, it was a tax credit grant. Yeah, so it was about a little over a $9 million project. So before we went into it, we did a comprehensive study to evaluate it, to make sure, because we wanted to make sure it made good financial sense. And when we did that, we estimated a payback of probably around 10 to 11 years. But with this increased savings that we're seeing off the transportation charges, we'll probably reduce that by several years.
And the useful life?
Useful life is expected 20 to 25 years. Yes.
Is there any future of building more?
Yes, I think if the situation is right. Like here, all three areas are in the floodplain. So they're really not probably going to be buildable sites. The city already owned those properties. So, so it made sense there. Plus, with us we knew we were going to relocate our electrical substation. You really want it to be as close to the source as you can get it for losses. So it just made sense. So as long as we find similar type situations where it makes sense and it makes good financial sense, yeah, absolutely. I think it's been a proven technology for us. But once again, it's just a small piece, being only 3%. So the second project that we're doing. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
So that 3%, how will that change when we add the 15,000 more homes? What percentage will that change?
1,500 more homes. Yeah, really, residential growth from an electrical standpoint is pretty minimal. Most of our load is when we get the big manufacturing facilities come in, they use a lot more electricity than homes do. So, yes.
So then also too, how much are like our street lights and all of our lights are all around town? Do those affect our electrical costs?
Yeah, the electric department provides and maintains all the street lights, all the traffic signals. We've converted all of them to LED to make sure they're energy efficient. But yeah, obviously that's a cost to the electric department and ultimately the city by providing street lights, traffic signals.
So are you part of the streetlight division too? Can you speak to that? The streetlights?
Yeah, that's part of our responsibility.
So like on Deerfield, it's blinding bright. It looks like daytime, even in the middle of the night. Is there any mitigation that you guys can do to those lights?
No, that's a challenging part, the way they construct the LED lights.
Yeah.
It points directly down. And that's the big difference in LEDs versus the old technologies, the high pressure sodium and the other technologies that were used. It's more of what's called a point source, where it's a very direct light. But they manufacture them so it throws it directly down. But yeah, we get a lot of people talk about that where they feel that it's a lot brighter. But the actual light output of that light is the same as the old technology. It's just, it looks different. And I know you look at an LED light next to one of the old lights.
In my house, like I've had to put all black light, extra curtains up because it's even coming into my bedroom in the back of my house where the other ones never did that. The light.
On Deerfield?
Yes.
Well, we can take a look at that and see the placement of it.
When they did them on Cook Road up where I live, the ones coming down the street are dimmer than the ones in the intersection.
But yeah, we've got two different,
There's like two balls.
there's two different powers of that. When we have main thoroughfare and then when we get into the residential neighborhoods, it's less, a light fixture that puts out less light. And it was the same way with the old lights. The old lights, we used a 310 watt high pressure sodium, and when we got into the neighborhoods, we used 150. So when we replace them with LEDs, they're equivalent fixtures, equivalent light output to those original lights. And I know they work very well in inclement weather, with rain and fog, because they concentrate that light and you see a lot better than the old technology. Yes?
We're actually in Turtle Creek Township, so you guys don't cover that area, right?
We do not.
Okay. We have not many neighborhood lights in our neighborhood on the road that she's talking about. But was that something that they could look at? Because they can do or more lights around.
Yeah, unfortunately, you're gonna have to deal with your local
I don't know.
jurisdiction.
Yeah, it didn't make me think of it till now, but maybe.
Yeah,
That's Duke Energy.
yeah, that's Duke Energy out there. But the township pays Duke to put those streetlights out there, typically. So yeah, I would.
I don't think we have these fancy LED ones, yes. It's not doing it.
Yeah.
So, thanks.
We definitely have lots. Yes?
I talked to Scott, we had ours replaced right across the street, and they are bright, but we've gotten used to it. We changed our curtains, and my wife loves the safety. They light up that whole area really nice, because the other ones were dark, so we're kind of a 50-50 household now. But we are getting used to it, appreciate the brightness. Is there any plan to light the new bridge going across 48? That's probably one of the things I get a lot of comments on, is how dark it is.
At Turtle Creek?
How dark
Yes,
it
yeah,
is.
that's on our to-do list. To
That's
add
a
it
dark barn.
where the bike trail comes out and come up to the bridge, yes. We're gonna add 2 more lights up there.
I'm in Home Depot like daily, and all the early birds, all the people that work there are coming in at night, are dark.
Yes.
And I get hit with that on a regular basis.
Yeah, it is. It's in our queue to get done.
Great, I'll be happy.
Yes. All right. So one of the other things that we're doing to try to minimize that transportation cost is adding what we call behind-the-meter generation. It's a natural gas-fired engine generator. We're adding 8 of these units, 6 of them at a substation that we own down on Columbia Road, so it's down in the industrial park. And then we're adding 2 units at our Monroe sub, which is right behind the shopping center where Vance is located, the old, what was called the Big Bear Shopping Center, for those who've been around for a while. This will do a couple of things for us. It'll save us tremendously. The capacity of this is probably, well, the solar array is 10 megawatts. We're putting 20 megawatts of natural gas generation. But the beauty of it is we can run these anytime. We don't need the sun. We can run these at night. So like this week, the grid peaks at about 4 a.m. to about 9 a.m. in the morning. Solar doesn't do us a whole lot of good. These units, we can turn them on and run them during that time and ensure that we can save that transportation cost. Plus, energy prices, just buying power is going up and up. And this is a way that we know we've got a fixed cost with this, and we know what that is. And we're able to actually generate when it makes financial sense to be able to do that. Yes, sir?
How did you deal with the storm on the solar panels? You clean them off? What do you do?
No, typically we just, like when the snow fell,
They're covered with snow.
they're covered with snow, but just over time, it just takes a little bit of sun that really melts. Then it comes right off. But yeah, we didn't have any issues. Yes?
Could you talk a little bit about the behind-the-meter generation? Just to, I guess, explain the savings that went with that on the peak shaving. I think that's important.
Yeah, really, the way the city did this project, there was no out-of-pocket from the city. We belong to a municipal organization called American Municipal Power, AMP. So they're actually funding this up front. And what we're doing is we're using the savings, the transportation savings plus the energy savings that we get from it to offset that cost. So this is another project, just like the solar, where really we used 24 costs, what they were at that time, were our supply cost, our generation cost, have gone up tremendously. So even with the cost from 24, these pay for themselves. So as costs go up, it's just going to reduce the payback on these. You know, this is a $28 million project that, just like with the solar, had probably a 15 to 18 year payback on it. But as wholesale prices and the cost of transportation continue to go up, it's going to continue to take that payback and reduce it. You know, and these have a life of about 40 to 45 years. So hopefully they'll pay themselves off in 12 to 15 years, and the city will get more than half of its life to go back into the system.
Talk about emergency response.
Yes, and emergency response. Yeah, that's one thing with the gas units. We're able to use these in contingency or emergency situations. So we have a couple of them set up, what they're called are black start. So if the grid completely goes down, typically most generation that you have, backup generators, have to have a known voltage source in order to tie them into the grid. Well, you add additional things to it, what's called black start, to where you can start these units up and it can start our local grid up. So we could actually use these to support part of the town. You know, this isn't enough to feed the entire town, but we can supply a little bit of the town and get it back up until we can get the utility power back up. So that's another use of these units. You know, the city, going back in history a little bit, the city used to generate all their own electricity, all the way up until 1974. We still have sort of those legacy units at the old power plant here in the middle of town. And we continued to use those units up until about 4 years ago, in the same manner, by peak shaving and running them when the energy market was much higher than what it was to operate those things. But they just got too old to continue to operate them. They're 57, 58 years old by now, which is young in my world, but in the equipment world, not so much. And I don't just skip the fact, I think it's good for everybody to understand the diversification comment there, that we're part owners of Fremont, we purchase power from there, and this diversification helps us, unless you're going to touch on those else. No, that's good. Thank you for reminding me. Yeah, I think I always found it interesting, I think it's important. Yeah, that's what we've always tried to do with how we buy power for the city. We try to treat it just like a financial portfolio. We try to break it up into many different pieces. That way we're not exposed if something happens with one technology or the other. So we make long purchases off the market. We go forward and look. Like right now, we're looking at buying some power from 28 to 2032, just to sort of lock some of that in at whatever the prices are. But we also look at what are cost-based. These are like cost-based sources. So we want to diversify what that is, and that helps to keep power prices stable. And once again, try to insulate us, pretty much hedge against different factors that work in our world. So we really do. We work really hard at trying to diversify what our supply is. And yet we expect to have these operational by the summer, by June. We just had the last 2 units delivered up at Monroe this week. The original 6 down in Columbia are already in place. We're getting ready to test them. Yes, sir.
Say like if we have a big storm, knocks out the power for a long period of time, can them supply like the grocery stores, gas stations?
Those 8 total make up maybe a quarter of the city's load, plus where they're geographically located makes it tough. Yeah, this one is up off of Monroe Road. So yeah, it would have the possibility of feeding some down Columbus, But obviously, we would try to look at some of the critical loads, hospitals, city buildings, police station, fire station, city building, so we would get those up first. But yeah, if we had the ability to, then we can.
But the fire station, police station should have their own generator. Right?
They do.
Well, that makes sense, right?
Yes, yeah. So we, just like with managing electric outage like that, you prioritize it, and obviously you get your high priorities up first. Your your nursing homes, all of those types of facilities. You want to get it, and then you figure it out from there. But yeah, it's just another tool on a tool belt to be able to put up a good fight. So the benefits, obviously using a diversified portfolio and some of these strategies, we're able to keep our power prices in a good place, but pretty well below market. This is looking at it from December of this year. A normal residential customer, our average residential customer uses about 900 kilowatt hours a month. So in the city, that bill costs them $116. If they lived in Columbus, you can see $177. Live down in Cincinnati, that's $166. Up in Dayton, that's $168. So we're significantly less than all of our regional peers, and we've been able to do that for pretty good, probably 10 to 15 years now. We've been able to stay below the market by looking at these different strategies. It's just like everywhere. It's an ever-changing and evolving world, and we have to stay on top of it and be proactive with the steps that we take in order to stay this way. We don't have a magic bullet. It still costs us inflation, and when equipment and when everything goes up, we still have to pay it just like they do. But we try to be proactive and be smart about how we do it.
Is there a plan as our commercial parks enlarge, like Sears One and whatnot, they have large demands of power as they
Yes.
expand? Do we add more generators or the ones you just showed us, or how do we compensate? There's a lot of buzz on the internet about how much power these data centers take, and I'm looking more into understanding that. There's concerns about wastewater. There's people just don't, either they really understand it or they don't understand it. I'm just learning, but there seems to be a huge concern for a large structure that doesn't have huge employment because it's basically machines.
Yes.
But as those things are built and they demand power, what's Lebanon's, because we want them, what's Lebanon's response to be able to provide that power?
Well, it definitely presents a challenge to anybody that serves something like that rapidly grows. We're dealing with it. The gas generators was one way to help us deal with that. That was another side benefit of putting that in, is it helps us sort of bridge that gap until we can get additional capacity built to us in our system. So we'll just have to look at it. Once again, it's a $28 million investment. We can't just go do that every year. So we'll evaluate it, and when it makes sense, absolutely. And once again, I think it's about diversifying. We've got 20 megawatts of natural gas generation. If it proves itself, then yeah, maybe in 5 or 6 years, you add another piece. If that's the technology that is the most cost-effective and works with what you need, then yeah, we just always have to continue to explore those.
And I'm not sure everybody understands, we make money selling electric. So when people have a high demand, that's...
We pay for the services.
Right.
We don't make money.
In the city.
But yes, the city as a whole, we're paying for what it costs us to provide that service.
Right. So they're not, if a large entity locates, it's not, because that's what you hear, well, taxes are going to raise, your rates are going to raise. They cover their net while they're there, they cover it.
Yes.
In the electric they buy. But I'm just kind of going mentally through the list of all the things that I've been reading. One of them was the concern of the environment, which I'm sure we've addressed. Two was raising rates while they're getting big, rates go up to support that, but we covered that by the cost of electricity they buy. So I just want people to feel comfortable when they see other entities being built in our commercial parks.
Well, as you know, the general fund itself, that's one of the things. There's a state of Ohio, what's called a state of Ohio kilowatt hour tax that every electric utility charges. Duke and AES Ohio charge that, and then they send that money to the state of Ohio. Well, with us being a city-owned and operated electric utility, we charge it, but per that law, then we transfer that money over to the city's general fund. So the local jurisdiction can use that money for the services. And it's substantial. Our kilowatt hour tax for last year was $1.6 million that we collected, and then it gets handed over to the general fund. So yeah, absolutely. As we get customers come in that are using more, generating more of that kilowatt hour tax, then that's also more revenue that's coming over to the general fund to pay for police and roads and all the general fund services that are there. So it's a mutually beneficial thing that's happening. It is challenging when you have that type of load and the increase in load as rapidly as it happens. Yes? I don't want us to lose the nuance. So the data center takes a lot of energy. They're paying that tax that would have been going to the state. It's going to us. So there's that don't want to gloss over that. That was a benefit for us when they moved in here. Other places, other cities don't own their own, don't have this set up. I don't own our own utility like this. They don't get that benefit. That money goes straight to the state. So that was a great win for us with Sirius One becoming a data center like they are.
How many businesses that have gone in Lebanon have you done tax abatements for?
That would be,
Yeah. Because it's accurate information, unless you're doing the tax abatements for, tons of years.
Yeah, I can tell you for Cyrus One, the data center, there were no tax abatements for that project. I think right now there's one current, or maybe two current projects that have what's called tax increment financing incentive. And so that's about it right now. I mean, some of these areas are in what's called a community reinvestment area. So if they come in and make improvements to property, expand the business, something like that, in a CRA area, they can have just the improved portion of the property taxes abated for a certain period of time. A couple years ago, the city changed our code to where instead of it being like an automatic abatement incentive, it has to be negotiated directly with the city. So we have the ability to determine, how many jobs does it create? Is it worth an incentive or not? We do large employers. So for us, part of what we work on is attracting jobs into our community because that's what pays the bills for police officers and those services. But I would say generally, it's used relatively sparingly.
Gotcha.
I spoke to somebody who works at Sirius One, and they said the new housing that are being developed right by there now are complaining about the noise. And I said, well, that shouldn't be an issue because you were there first, but have you heard any of that?
I have not. Yeah, I mean, there's really not noise. I have not got a single noise complaint coming out of the facility before, yeah.
I believe that's
Okay.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, Sean. And obviously, we'll be sticking around if you have questions afterwards. We're going to kind of dive into some of the development, private development projects that are underway, kind of get folks answer the questions that you may have on that. So, commercial projects, couple the new Wawa that's being built there at the intersection of Kingsview Drive and Bypass 48. They say it's going to open in February. We'll see. There's a new daycare facility that's getting built kind of behind the Big Mike's gas station off of Main Street. You can kind of see that construction activity. Fifth Third, so that is going in front of Tractor Supply. You can kind of see that building coming up out of the ground. And Lebanon Christian Academy, they're constructing a kind of a new gym complex on West Main Street as well. So we're seeing some infill development. One of the city's goals is certainly to encourage infill development. So projects like the Fifth Third, where we essentially are allowing them to take out of service parking that never got used and actually build something there that creates jobs, has been one of the city's goals. And we're seeing some of that activity with Chipotle as another good example. Over the past 2 years, we've seen almost $250 million of private and public investment in building type projects. So there's definitely investment being made in our community. Down in our business park, when we do like Job Shadow Day with the high school kids, I always drive them down into our business parks because I think a lot of people don't realize it's down there or don't realize that it's part of Lebanon, but it's a huge part of Lebanon. It's where our large employers are based out of. There's a new facility under construction. JBM Packaging is building right now. It's about a $6.5 million facility. And then Bluebell up in Lebanon Commerce Center off of Homan Road. Again, they're in the process of building about a $5 million facility. These projects, they don't add any kids to the school district. Obviously, they're paying property taxes. So they are contributing to the financial success of our community. South Broadway. So this is the old Golden Turtle Chocolate Factory building, 120 South Broadway. The city purchased that building several years ago, and we also just recently purchased what I call the Lemon Tree Antique Building right next to it. And we have a preliminary development agreement with the developer to build a mixed-use building at the corner. You can kind of see a rendering of it. Again, it's preliminary at this point. He's working through due diligence on the project and the financials, but the thought is a kind of first floor, have about a 6,000 square foot kind of restaurant or commercial space, and then apartment units above. Downtown living is something that we are trying to encourage. It helps our downtown businesses, and people want to be part of downtown Lebanon. So we think this is a good opportunity to encourage that and try to activate that into Broadway a bit. It's a bit of a dead space right now. So that's the goal with this project. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I just had a question about growth, in general, as far as housing. I see a lot of development, I see a lot of growth of new apartments, single-family units and whatnot. But what is being done to encourage the development of actual affordable housing for the people of Lebanon?
Yeah.
How many people are being pushed out because they just can't afford it anymore, long-term residents?
Yeah, I mean, I think it boils down to what is your definition of affordable housing. I mean, the reality is we're not seeing people build homes for under $400,000. Within Warren County. I don't think it's just a Lebanon, situation. I think it's countywide. Obviously, the apartments, are part of, the diversification of housing options. There are some townhomes that are being built on North Mechanic Street, but if you're asking me, is anybody, the only way to, in my opinion, the only way to encourage a home builder to come in and build a home for $300,000 would be for government to subsidize it. Otherwise, the market is not supporting that type of build right now, at least in Warren County.
Is there anything being done to discourage these out-of-state investors from
So,
coming in? I personally am in a situation right now where I'm trying to help someone where one investor has purchased 6 properties in the downtown area within the last year.
Yeah.
And the rents are basically being doubled on every one of these properties. And these people are being forced out, long-term residents. We are forcing out our most vulnerable.
So I know 2 things. The state has taken that up as a discussion item. So I think there's some discussion at the state level to pass legislation that addresses that. At the local level, it just went through our planning commission, and it'll be going to city council later this month, where if you're an out-of-state rental property owner and you own 5 or more apartments or buildings, you have to have an on-site manager. So part of what we're seeing is the out-of-state companies don't have that local rep or kind of local management connection. So that is one thing that we're looking at upgrading our code to, is at least if you're going to be an out-of-state rental owner, you're going to have local representation to, interact, not only with the city, but with the tenants as well. I think maybe the other part of my answer on your affordable housing is, the way it's supposed to work is as you build, a little higher priced homes, people kind of move out of their existing home and up into those, and that opens up opportunities at the lower price point. And again, it's a challenge because that's just not happening nationally, with the housing market. To some degree, it's an availability, concern. So, the goal would be as new housing product becomes available, that kind of has a domino effect that opens up some more affordable houses. Because we do, if you look at our comprehensive plan, we looked at this, and Lebanon has a pretty good mix of types of housing in general compared to, say, Mason or Springboro or some of our other, Warren County communities. But it is a challenge.
We talked about it.
Yeah.
The option of trying to require someone to be local means these big investment like REITs, that the big investment, the BlackRocks and the big investment companies can't go around and buy these because they gotta have somebody on site. Now, would they do that? Maybe, but if we just go and try to ban it outright, we couldn't figure out a way to do that, we'd be sued. We talked to our state rep, it's gonna have to use it.
And I understand that it's limited, and I don't want to take up the whole meeting, but 5 years ago, I personally helped an elderly veteran get off the street and get a home, and he's been in that home for 5 years. His building was just purchased by an out-of-state investor. His rent is literally being doubled. And when you're talking about somebody who makes less than $1,000 a month for Social Security, so as of Sunday, he will be living in his car. And that just makes me sad that, as a community, there's not even a warming center, there's no resources, there's nothing for him around. I spent all day yesterday calling every place that I could possibly find that I was referred to from Warren County Community Services, Council of Aging, the VA. I called everyone. Nobody has less than a 1-year waiting list. And there's not even a warming center. We're spending $1 million on a splash pad, which is great to cool off the kids in the summer. But what are we doing to keep people from freezing to death in the winter?
Did you reach out to Family Promise?
Yes.
You did, okay.
But the key word there is family.
Okay.
If you don't have kids,
Yeah.
and he's 74 years old.
You got 2 questions here.
So earlier you showed 528 apartment units, here's 27. Where does the thought process or the decision factor come in, apartments as opposed to condos, sellable condos and townhomes?
Yeah, we are doing the, owner-occupied townhomes on North Mechanic Street. So if you go up there, that was a specific requirement that those were owner-occupied. I think just with it being downtown, the lot's relatively small, and construction costs are high. So I think, trying to get our biggest bang for the buck in terms of creating new housing opportunities downtown, the apartments were the best way to go. I mean, these are larger apartments. These are, they're not affordable apartments, to be honest with you. But I think that was the thought, is just because the lot in the grand scheme of things is pretty small, to try to get, something that's relatively dense in our downtown area.
So my question was about when you're putting more regulations on these businesses to have local person, don't you think that they're just going to increase the cost of rent so that they can cover that cost of having somebody on site?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's a concern. On the flip side, we have a lot of issues with the out-of-state companies not having somebody local that can address issues that come up. So, I think it's our attempt to try to create some sort of at least point of contacts where there's some local representation. But, that could have that impact. I'm not saying it doesn't. But I think they have apartment managers, they're just not around here currently.
The ironic place is the LLC that I'm referring to just bought their 6th building this month, actually, and they call themselves Cozy Ohio. It just doesn't feel real cozy when you're being kicked out.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't know if I'm the only one or not, but that looks like too big for that corner, too large, too tall, too...
Yeah,
I
I
thought it was LCMB, the old LCMB when I first saw that. So my thoughts are, I don't want to offend if the city council's already looked at that and say, oh, that's beautiful.
Who owns
I don't want to hurt anybody's
Pardon
feelings. But what is the LCMB, the old LCMB, because that's what that building appears to be.
well, so the facade's going to look very different than the LCMB building. It's going to have a brick facade and kind of match more of the historical elements. Again, this is just a rendering, it's not color. But what's interesting is there was actually, used to be a building at this location that was actually bigger and taller than that got demolished. So when you talk about downtown, that really is the place to do larger scale buildings and a little bit more dense residential. That's kind of how downtown's developed over the years. So yeah, I mean, definitely there's certainly places where that wouldn't be appropriate, but given the fact that there was literally, used to be a building there that's even bigger than that, we didn't feel like it was out of character with the history of.
So when was that?
It was, the building itself was from the late 1800s, early 1900s. It's been tore down a long time, before I got here, which is 25 years ago, so, yeah. But I've seen photos of it, it exists, yeah.
I believe you on it.
Yeah.
It's just now, present day, it just looks overdone.
Yeah, I mean, and that's, and those are newer buildings. I mean, those aren't the original buildings to that site.
Did you say you're taking down the lemon tree?
Yeah, the lemon tree antique building,
coming down.
but not where the doctor's office is up there, that's staying, that's not.
So this is a sealed deal then, this 3
It's preliminary, it's preliminary. I think the only way the numbers work financially is to build or make that type of investment is to be able to, build up with a multi-story. So, redevelopment projects, I tell people they're hard and they're expensive. It's much cheaper to go out in a field somewhere and just, when you're trying to redevelop, I mean, there's some contamination on the site that has to be dealt with because it used to be an old garage. So they're expensive and they're hard. When we kind of went out to market and did an RFP on this, we pretty much had 2 developers look at it. One decided it was too costly, and so we have 1 left. I mean, they're not beating on the door to take on it. It's a challenging project.
We said this, I said the same thing about the height, and then I looked out the window, Golden Lambs, 4 stories. This building's huge. Lebanon is filled with 3-story buildings. And I didn't really realize it, and because I didn't want it to. You get the 5th, if you've ever been downtown Loveland, how they've got their tall building right in the square right there, you kind of get used to it, and Atlanta, with the train across the street to kind of bring it back down, and then it's the entrance of Broadway's neighborhood. That picture does make it look like it doesn't fit, but the builder's really good.
I know there's 2 and 3-story buildings up in this, I mean, this building we're in, it's a tall building. Just on that particular block, there's just like, like 2-story, I should say.
Well, the shoe factory.
Shoe factory is just down, yeah.
Is that the city building?
Yeah, that's the city, yeah. The train station's right on the right of that image, yeah.
I'll get used to it, I'll just.
We tried, I mean, we were, I envisioned, I actually sent pictures from Portsmouth, I saw that there was a 7-story building that was very narrow. It was right downtown, it was a hotel, it was beautiful. Yeah. I went to a wedding down there. They'd taken an old department store and turned it into a wedding venue. They still have the escalators inside and everything. And right across the street, it's probably 2 units wide, but it was 7 stories tall, and it fit. And I bet we couldn't get anybody to bite to bring a microtel downtown. We tried really hard.
Just a microtel?
Yeah, just for a place for people to stay.
Yeah, right. I'll get used to it. My dad had a business in the building, the chocolate factory back in the 60s.
Yeah. But believe me, we tried very hard to get the Kasujis to keep the chocolate factory open.
Oh,
and
yeah.
But they were ready to retire. So.
I'm sure.
So I wanted to definitely spend a little bit of time talking about the fairgrounds. Obviously, we're getting questions, and there's a lot out there. And I want to start with kind of why. Why are we doing the city-county partnership? From the city's perspective, this property is located in the heart of our community. We really kind of consider it the northern edge of our downtown. And there's been quite a bit of public and private investment on the North Broadway corridor, kind of leading up to the property. From our perspective, and it's not just me, others have really looked at the current financial model up there, and there's challenges, and I would say it's not sustainable when you look at the current kind of county ag society model, and some of the challenges that the ag society is having financially. So there's a desire both from the county and the city to kind of change that trajectory. And frankly, the harness horsemen kind of got caught up in a lot of that. And a lot of this, Frank, kind of got triggered with the eviction notice that the Ag Society sent out over a year ago that kind of got everybody looking at the map and looking at the issue in the situation up there. I can say both the city and the county very much want to preserve the history and the agricultural heritage that this property represents. It is a part of Lebanon. I think folks kind of think, well, why does the city care about agriculture and that history? It's part of our community and part of our history. And, we try to promote history within downtown and our community. And so, to do that, we have been negotiating new leases with the Ag Society and the Harness Horsemen with the understanding that the city would purchase the property from the county. We are not there yet, so this is not a done deal. We're still working through that. I can say that our goal is 100% to continue to support the 4-H programs. We want to provide a home for the fair up there. Those provide outstanding youth development opportunities within the community. I know my family has experienced that firsthand. I know we have council members who have as well. There are definitely opportunities to expand the events up at the fairgrounds beyond just Fair Week. We hear a lot about Fair Week, and it's very important, but there's a lot of other activities and things that can be done up there throughout the entire year, and we really like to be able to kind of integrate those type of activities and events with our broader community downtown events and our parks operation. We're in the park business. And to a certain degree, when you talk about an event center and events that can take place up there, it lends itself very well to what we're already doing in our downtown and in our park system. We will talk a little bit about some new investment opportunities along North Broadway, along the frontage, that we've kind of worked out or as part of the planned purchase. I think with the city ownership, there's an opportunity for us to go out and leverage our ability to get grants. And the Ag Society has the ability to get their own grants. And I think working together, we can certainly fund improvements to those facilities. I honestly feel like anybody who's spent time at the fairgrounds and in those facilities recognizes there's a need for investment. And that is going to take money. It's kind of like our roads. They're not going to fix themselves on our own. And somebody needs to kind of be willing to step up and create a plan to improve those facilities to better reflect our community. And then finally, we do want to build a new police station behind Fire Station 41. And you'll kind of see where we're talking about with that. So just, what are those parameters, the property purchase parameters between the city and the county? The agreement, again, that hasn't been legislatively finalized, but the agreement that's verbally in place is that the city would purchase all of the property up there, including property that we call it the Carlo property, but it had been essentially purchased or funded by the Warren County Port Authority, but then deeded to the Ag Society, and that parcel reverts to the county in 2028 unless the Ag Society buys it out. We are offering essentially a 25-year lease with the Warren County Ag Society for the area that we're defining as, 4-H fair focused. And I do have a map that kind of shows that. So, as we kind of got into this process of working with the county and the Ag Society on opportunities on the property, we kind of developed this definition of areas that were broken into 3 distinct components. So Area A, which is right here, that's kind of the core 4-H fair area, if you will. I know that, obviously during fair, parking bleeds out all over the place, but if you look at kind of the core 4-H fair related facilities, that's generally defined as Area A. Area B is what we've negotiated with the Harness Horsemen as their lease area. So we are, pretty much done with a 8-year lease agreement that ensures that the Harness Horsemen stay up here. And that is Area B. So they've kind of consolidated their footprint, if you will, and they're going to be vacating some of the barns that you see in Area C here. So those 3 barns and some of these other buildings here would be demoed as part of this Area C that is open for development. And we'll talk a little bit about what that could be. The track kitchen remains, and Building A, kind of the welcome center, those buildings would remain within the redevelopment concept there.
I think you would have immunity if you tried to get rid of the track kitchen.
Yeah, I had lunch up there today, so we're...
Even though Kathy's leaving,
yeah, I don't know. Well, maybe she'll stay, we'll see. Yeah. So that's kind of when we talk about these lease agreements, this is the approach that, we moved forward with earlier this year, and that was based on kind of this working group that had been working on it for a while between the county, the city. There was Ag Society representation on it, and Harness Horseman representation on it. Like I said, so the city has essentially finalized negotiations with the Harness Horsemen for them to continue or to lease out 11 barns. Part of the agreement has the city providing some help to fix those barns up, and the Harness Horsemen are going to put some money into fixing the barns up as well. One of the conditions that the county commissioners had is that they wanted the Harness Horsemen to have an opportunity to stand on their own. So the Harness Horsemen kind of went out, they formed their own nonprofit organization, and we have been negotiating lease terms directly with them. And they've kind of created a financial model where they feel like they can kind of, instead of being under the umbrella of the Ag Society, they want to control their own destiny, which I can understand. So that part of it, I won't say it's 100% done, but it's just about there. We are still in negotiations with the Ag Society to discuss a 25-year lease with them. And then again, Area C, we do part of, fixing the funding model or the financial model up there. I know from our perspective is creating opportunities for private investment with the goal of using that private investment to go into the property as a whole, again, to start working on how do we kind of fix up the core facilities that our community enjoys. So that's the concept. So the city, back kind of late last year, we knew we needed a master plan for the property. We knew we needed to kind of get our head around a vision for what the property could be. So we created a very transparent stakeholder committee. There's about 20 individuals that have been meeting to help us, with the help of a consultant that the city hired, help us create kind of a future vision for the property that reflects all the different interests out there. It's a complicated property. You have the 4-H and the Ag Society, you have the horsemen, you have the county, the city, the township. They're all at the table as part of this process. And I'm not going to go into detail on this slide, but I at least want to show it just so folks understand that there is work that has been created on a master plan for the property, and it's going to be discussed and presented in detail at a public open house on February 12th at 6 p.m. Up at the event center. And we want all of you and as many folks as possible to come out and provide feedback, kind of hear about the why. But I think it's important as you just kind of look at this that, again, what are kind of the core 4-H facilities, it's not just that they're being, that they remain, that there's investments being made based on input from actual 4-H users, advisors, folks on how to make it better. And I think that's our goal.
Would there ever be any consideration of using or allowing the event center to be used as a warming center?
Yeah, I think that's a very great idea. And I think part of, one of the reasons why we're excited about it is we've got our fire station right here, and this is the proposed police station. So having fire and police on site, I think, opens up some of those opportunities as well. So when we talked about the police station, again, this is kind of where it would be, which is behind the fire station.
I mean, it's great that the Y does on occasion, but honestly, most of our homeless are downtown.
Yeah.
So by the time you walk from downtown to the Y, it kind of defeats the purpose of going to a warming center. So that would be a great resource
We
for
can
them.
definitely look at that. And there's a lot of buildings up there. I mean, there is a lot of buildings. So
Exactly.
It's not the
That's what I'm
event
saying.
center.
We have areas of
Yeah.
opportunity.
Well, we've had complaints over the years of like homeless folks there. So again, just having a little bit more of a presence up there, I think would be beneficial for everybody. Any questions? I know that's a lot, and I want to make sure we answer any questions that folks may have about it. So we do have a plan for parking. I know that's one thing that we've heard a lot about. So
And the
please.
exit side would be great.
Increase better traffic flow through it. That's been something I know Councilmember Coates been very involved in and hitting on. Yeah, make sure we get better traffic circulation through it. So
I got in trouble for going the wrong way last year.
okay.
I would actually encourage everyone to, especially come to open house, there's been so much talk out in social media about the city wanting to kick people out, horsemen. I mean, we have tried, we made commitments where all we're trying to do, there's been so much disrepair and really neglect over the years for the fairgrounds and trying to make it better. And we don't want to run a fair. We don't want to run 4-H or the horsemen. We want to set the table so that they can be successful. And I think we're getting there. I mean, the negotiating, the city staff is working on it, awesome.
I was very involved when the horsemen first got the eviction notice, and I attended a lot of the county commissioner meetings. And I was very happy to see the city get involved because I think it has a little more meaning to us, and hopefully there's more oversight. Nothing against the Ag Society, nothing personal at all, but I think there was there could have been better management and better financial decisions made.
With the gym in the middle of the city that we have a chance to said before that the change, the thing that we can do here would last way beyond our lifetime, right? I mean, this is just, it's a generation.
Any other questions?
Staying up this big horse track.
Okay.
We just want
Oh yeah.
I have two questions.
Yes.
So, that master plan that you had there, that was very helpful. That's the first time I've seen that, so that helped me a lot. But I got two questions for you today, and these are just to help with clarity and understanding for me. But, so the county has a regulatory and oversight over the fairgrounds under the ORC 1711, granted by the state of Ohio. But as a municipality, what regulatory oversights does the city have, and who do they ultimately answer to?
Yeah, so the Ohio Revised Code does not, define city ownership of fairgrounds. It is very specific to either the county owning it, or it's that the Ag Society can lease property. So it does speak to the ability for Ag Societies and fairs to operate on non-county owned property, because it specifically says that they can lease out property. So I think that's why it's important to have a lease agreement. So when we talk about kind of the terms and conditions, that will be spelled out in a lease agreement. Right now, there's not a lease agreement in place between the county and the Ag Society. Both sides just kind of let it expire. So at the Ohio Revised Code level, there's no specifics in terms of, that relationship. But through a 25-year lease, our goal is to define that.
And I would be careful the way you read that, because I've studied it. You've got two levels of the statutory, two things going on at the statutory level. You've got the commissioner, the county commissioners, they may own property that the Ag Society can lease out. And I think the language in there was control meeting, I think was the verbiage. So you've got two elements. You've got who owns the property and who manages the property or, runs it. And the Ag Society is responsible by statutory code to run a fair. That's who can do that. They could go lease, they could go anywhere they wanted to do that to lease it. It doesn't have to be county-owned property.
But he asked what jurisdiction the city has. So if the county owns it and the county's leasing it to the Ag Society, what jurisdiction does Lebanon City have over that? Correct.
Well, it's in the city. So, this property is in the city of Lebanon Corporation limits. So it's a property that falls under our zoning code.
So it falls under Lebanon's code and the county jurisdiction?
It does not fall under county zoning at all. It's not under county jurisdiction beyond the fact that the county owns the property. It is fully within the city of Lebanon corporation. So it falls under if there's an issue up there, our police officers respond. If there's a fire up there, our fire department responds.
So it's under Lebanon's zoning laws?
Well, it's under the city of Lebanon, yeah. So it's currently zoned as a resort district. So
It's the same thing as the county campus. Lebanon police respond to, and Lebanon fire respond to emergencies at the county campus.
Yeah.
Just the same as.
When you say the county campus, you're talking about the career center, or what are you talking
No,
about?
where the county.
The government office.
The county, yeah, all the county buildings are under that same.
we provide all the utilities,
Sure.
electric, water, sewer. It's just like, just like a business.
That's it, just
But
like
you're
any other
saying-
business.
You're saying you guys are purchasing Area C, right?
We're purchasing all of it, all 94
Oh,
acres.
so the county's not going to own it, Lebanon's going
Correct.
to own it?
Yes,
And then so Lebanon would lease it to the Ag Society?
yes.
Okay, that's not.
But so the county answers to the state level. What about Lebanon? Like who are they? Who's over Lebanon?
Ultimately the state, we have to follow Ohio Revised Code laws like the county does. There's just not specific language in the ORC that contemplates city ownership, but of quote fairgrounds property. But it also does not, the state statute does not even define what a fair is. So I think, I would say that the current state law is probably antiquated in the sense of, needing to be updated. But ultimately, we follow, we have a board, city council, they make decisions. We can't enact laws that are in violation of state law.
And then my second question is, so I asked this to county commissioners as well, but have you considered, has setting a new precedent an impact on the Ohio Revised Code in the future? And not even just Ohio Revised Code, but of the entire country of selling fairgrounds to a city. Has setting that precedent been considered?
I think we realize that this is unique. This would be a unique situation where the city owns the fairgrounds. I think it's unique in the sense that some of the other projects or situations that I'm aware of where fairgrounds property have been sold, and let's take Montgomery County, for example. That fairgrounds property was sold for development, and it pushed the fair operation off the property. I think we're obviously taking a different approach where, yes, we are interested in buying it, but we want to keep it here. We want to keep it on the property. So, I mean, we've certainly considered that, from our perspective, and I think, Councilmember Coe said it well. I mean, we view this as a long-term opportunity to enhance our community, and obviously that's broader than just our residents.
If you consider it to be a long-term opportunity, how come you're only offering us the state-required minimum lease?
So we're offering it's essentially a 20-year lease with a 5-year renewal. Like any lease, things change, and I think it's important for both sides to, at some point, come to the table and talk about terms. So the fact that the lease isn't indefinite or 100 years doesn't mean that the city has an interest in not renewing that. I think what we're saying is we recognize that over the next 20 years, things are going to change in general, and I think it could change on both sides, right? And I think it's good for both sides to, at some point within a 25-year time period, come to the table and discuss the terms of the lease agreement and what needs to be updated or what doesn't. So I think that's been misinterpreted a bit in the sense that people feel like because it's only 25 years, that the city after that isn't going to want the fair there. And I mean, I work for a board, and I can tell you, I've not heard any of that from the city council and the board. But I also think it would be unwise to not recognize that it's good for both sides to come to the table. And I'll be honest with you, I think, the situation that folks are in with the county and the Ag Society right now, where a lease just expired and nobody even knew it expired because they weren't talking, that's what we want to avoid.
Thank you.
Do you know how long that lease was?
It had some renewal options. I want to say the most current lease was originated in like 2016. It was much shorter than 20 years. I know that. It was
I was
very
very
good.
surprised to see a 25-year lease, honestly. I was looking to see maybe more of 5 to 10, so I was happy to see a 25-year.
Yeah, but I think the county Ag Society lease, I mean, it's been several years since it expired.
Scott, I want to add something to that too. So, with a lot of things you can say, okay, this is ORC, that's kind of minimum. And you can look at like what the relationship has been like between the county and the Ag Society thus far. And as Scott mentioned, the lease expired. There's not been a conversation about that. And I'm not, it's not my place to say, okay, somebody should have done this or that or whatever. But I think it's important for people to understand that this is in our city. And we as council members, and Scott as our city manager, and all the other staff members, we care about what happens in the city more than anyone else is ever going to. It affects us the most. We see it the most. We take the responsibility for it the most. We take the hit for it the most. So if you look at all the entities that could be there and that could be responsible for it, and you think about who's going to care the most for it, it's us. Not because the Ohio Revised Code tells us to, but because we do. That's why we run to be on council. That's why we spend hours. That's why we spend sleepless nights, thinking about this stuff, talking about it, having meeting after meeting after meeting and saying, what can we do up there? This is awesome. What a great opportunity. And like I said, we do it because we care, and we do it because it's important to the city, and we care about the residents of the city. And we don't need the state or the Ohio Revised Code to tell us, you need to do this here. We're extending that as a grace, as a courtesy, as a kindness to say, we walked up there on the property, we saw problems, we saw what was going on, we saw these entities maybe not being treated in the best way possible, or the buildings being run down. We see that. It is outside of, there are zoning violations up there. That doesn't look good for our city. And we said, okay, this is a problem. What can we do about it? And if you can find somebody else that wants to do something about it, that's great, but we want to. So, I think it's important just to think about that. That's the minimum, but we want to do more than that, regardless of what the law says.
I feel like we hear a lot of that. We hear a lot of how much everybody wants to do, but all of this has been done pretty much in private. The term sheets have been done in private. There's nothing to say that there's a guarantee. Everybody talks about the future. In Warren County, say what you want, we're an agriculture community, and when you take something that is a county resource and put it within a municipality, it's very appropriate to have concerns. And to that, same thing, questions we asked to the county commissioners, why is this not a valid issue? Why are the city residents of Lebanon not voting on this issue before the purchase? Let the people speak for what the people want for your city. I asked the same thing of the county. Why is this not a valid issue? Because once you take the control out of that, we don't live in your city. I don't have a voice here. And I think it's very concerning. I think it's concerning, if you go back a slide, what are you saying about the financial situation?
With the Ag Society?
Number 2, go back one more. Number 2, current financial model for the property is not sustainable.
Yeah.
Point number 1.
I would say if you, and again, I'm speaking to, the numbers that I've seen with regards to the Ag Society.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Get on the state auditor's website. Look back for the last 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's available. The last 6 years are not available, just in case anybody's looking. But, so if the financial model is not sustainable, we've had an agricultural society that has misappropriated and mismanaged funds for the last 20 years that is visible. And you're willing to sign a lease with people, the same people, and I don't understand that.
Well, the lease changes their responsibilities. So right now, the county has essentially delegated to the Ag Society full management control of the entire property.
Mm-hmm.
The event center, they manage the harness horseman area. They have to maintain the buildings. They have to pay the utility bills. They are everything up there. The lease with the Ag Society changes that to where we are the property owner, we are paying the utility bills up there, we are responsible for fixing up the buildings, we are responsible for those investments. The Ag Society continues to be responsible for the fair, for running the fair, and we want that. So I feel like they can be very successful at running a fair up on this property. I think they are struggling to be the managers of a 94-acre piece of land that has millions of dollars worth of buildings that have to be maintained and you have to fund. So it's a different model.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like, for me, I haven't heard this. I haven't heard that this is going to be managed differently, that the Ag Society's responsibilities are going to change, the financial structure is going to change. Spell that out for your people.
I've presented these slides multiple times at city council meetings, I can tell you that.
This doesn't say that the financial structure and the financial responsibility is not going to be with the Agricultural Society. It doesn't say that.
Okay, it is, so they all have the lease agreement, they have it, it's spelled out in there. If you
And
like a
everybody's
copy-
covered under the Sunshine Law, and I get it.
Yeah.
I do get it, but I'm just saying that you were at the last Ag Society meeting.
Mm-hmm.
You said 4-H is well represented in your subcommittee. That was not the atmosphere of that meeting.
We have multiple representatives from the
I
4-H.
can tell you, I'm president of the 4-H Person Records Committee. I'm a 23-year advisor. I reached out immediately back in the fall when all of this went down and said, my kids, my horse kids, my 4-H kids need a voice at this table. When the time came around, they reached out to me and said, hey, we would like you to be a part of this committee. I've lived in the township, I've lived in the city. We have to remember that in 2012, our Ag Society got a kick in the teeth when gaming and racing moved out of that facility. So I don't know that it's necessarily that they mismanaged funds, but what they were used to having for 50, 60 years changed drastically. And in 2012, I was involved with a committee where we looked at what was going to happen with that property. And it was the same heated argument. I bring a voice to that room, and I mean, there's people that sit on this committee with me that will tell you, I have sat there and said, as a resident of the city, I don't want to see this, and I don't want to see that. Mr. Brunker will tell you, I want my police department out on the frontage. It's not going to happen. But we've agreed to disagree on that. But the important thing is that our kids have a place to show, that our kids have an area to show, and that our kids are represented. Young man, you asked at the last Ag Society, who has your back? There are people, I've been going to Ag Society meetings since the fall, again, when this all started. I sat at home in November when the commissioner said, we don't have a lease. I've known people who've been on the Ag Society for years. They want what's in the best interest of these kids. The county has washed their hands of it. They've not gone after the lease, they've not pursued the lease, they've not done it. But there are people sitting at the table that have reached out and said, okay, our kids need a voice. Our kids need to have a place to show. What are we going to do to support them? And I will continue to fight for these kids. And I will continue to stand up for the Ag Society as far as the problems that they've got now are not all of their own making.
Correct, and I said that at the last meeting as well. I said, you can't sit here and hang today's problems around the neck of this board. I did say that, that was me that said that. And I do agree.
There's a lot of finger pointing going
Yes.
on right now.
And you know
and
what?
a lot of interpretation by non-attorneys about things that have happened.
It's a triangle, and our kids are in the middle, and so that's what I'm here to represent.
Right.
And so it's the same. I mean, we're just here trying to get more information. Every meeting we come to, it's like, oh, this is revealed. Oh, this is revealed.
Yeah, and that's why we've included this in this meeting, is wanting to answer those questions. I appreciate the questions because, you know, we are trying to be transparent and answer questions that get presented to us. And from the start on this master plan, we knew we needed a stakeholder committee and there's 20 people sitting around a table. We can't invite everybody, obviously it has to be manageable, but it's not been just the city making these decisions and you know, with tunnel vision. Yep.
So, you know, I'm a city resident. You know, and if right now, it's in the county, it's responsibility. And if the county has decided, we've washed our hands, it's too expensive, and that's county numbers, I don't know how many people are in the county, what makes you think that the city is not going to say, we don't want to fund that?
Excuse me, I haven't, did you hear them say we want to wash our hands because it's too expensive? I've not heard. I've not heard the county say they want out because it's too expensive.
She said that.
Oh,
She didn't say this was too expensive.
No, I didn't hear.
They've changed paths.
Now, washing
Maybe
their
that's a
hands,
better-
I'll go with that, but the money isn't the issue. And what I've gone to every meeting about this fairground that I've been allowed to go to except for one. So as a citizen, because I live in Lebanon, and as city council also, and I'm also on the stakeholders board or committee. My take from it in a very simple way is the county's going to sell this property to someone. Does Lebanon, there is no vote, we can buy property, but the county's going to sell it. I've read the letter that came from their financial person. Do you want someone else to buy it and they can do whatever they want pending our zoning? Or do you want Lebanon, who does a really good job? You may not like what we do, but you gotta admit it's a good job. Whether you like bike trails, you like apartments, or you don't. Everything Lebanon's done in the last, Mr. Brunka doesn't like this, since Mr. Brunka's been here, has been really nice and well run, well thought of. There's been money, just like making all these trails or making all these parks, putting escrow money away to pay for those in the future. Those are great things. As a businessman, the way I run my business, I do the exact same thing. I put money away for the future. So if a water heater goes out, I don't freak out. I've got all the money set aside for that. That's how we run our city. I don't want an entity who I don't know to buy 94 acres in the middle of my town and do what they want there. I don't want that. I'm speaking as a citizen. I like the idea of the people in the town that I've lived in for most of my life to take this property over. I grew up, I was born here. I love the fair. It's not going anywhere. We have other plans for that property. I was appalled at the condition of the property when I walked it. I had not been to that north side since I used to hop the fence off of the sales and sneak into the fair. I've not been there, and that was a long time ago, not like now. But I was appalled. I stood there with the horsemen and said, I declare this the worst property in the city of Lebanon. they should be condemned. They're dangerous, it's horrible, it was appalling. You can go back to, well, who, was that the Ag's fault, or was that the Commissioner's fault? Doesn't matter anymore. Lebanon wants it, we want to fix it up, we want to make it profitable for Lebanon, we want the Ag Society to be involved at the fair with the 4-H thriving, we want the horsemen doing their thing. That's all this is about. It's not about bulldozing the fair and putting up a farm and all these rumors that fly around. So I'm very vested in my own personal time and sitting on every committee or listening to everybody talk about it, because I personally love the idea of Lebanon running what's going to happen up there. I love that idea over anybody else, because 94 acres, you can do a lot of ugly if you're not careful. You really could.
I mean, our commitment is to set the table for you guys. Ag Society, the Horsemen have cast this vision. I mean, the location with this practice track facility is to the other venues, and I didn't know how the horse racing venues, rotate around in different seasons. I didn't know that. But like better barns, better maintenance on the track. I mean, it is primed to be to have great things happen there. More barns or nicer barns. See, I've got to tear some down. So like that's our
safe
barns, right?
So we don't have another fire in another day.
The park, the campground is back there. Who knows what's back there? There's old debris and stuff where we get cleaned up and we can have a real nice campground for fair week, people coming in, or for when there's races, or not races, I'm sorry, but when there's events going on, like, how can we do something where you can have more and broad, bigger events for 4-H? And for, that's what we're trying to do, is set the table. And the dysfunction that's going on with Ag Society, honestly, we talked about it. All we can do is try to do the right thing, get the purchase done, get the lease agreements set up. Ag Society has to, we can't, other than watch them fight, and pray that they cooler heads prevail, we can't help that. I wish we could. It's like, have a great thing going on. If we sit down and talk, instead of,
I think just separating the Ag Society and the Horsemen would be a huge win. Because I think a lot of the issues with the Ag Society is the money was not being allocated correctly towards the Horsemen, and the facilities receiving the maintenance that they need. Funds that were being collected were not being accounted for properly. There were bids going out. There's a lot of issues, but I think separating those two will definitely solve a lot of the issues going forward.
The lease agreement that Ms. Barnes is working on helps the Ag Society focus on the fair, 4-H. That statutorily, I love it that you even bother to read the Advice Code. I love those are great questions because it kind of lays it out, right? The Ag Society needs to focus on those things and not all that other perverted stuff that hasn't been done well, so we've argued.
We're actually working on establishing a second agricultural society for the fairgrounds to try to have two different parties, separate ideas, and then to look at it from multiple different perspectives to see what would be the best for the fairgrounds.
I don't keep that to yourself, but.
That was just like, he's just trying to come up with ideas. This is a kid who was raised in 4-H, who's just saying, what can we do, Mom? What can we do? And not that we're trying to do that. He's just thinking out loud. Like, he's just a kid. He wants to see what he loves, so be here for his grandkids. And there's no guarantee for that. You're taking something, as Mrs. Bowles said at one of the commissioners' meetings, this fairgrounds has seen things. It's been around for a long time and withstood in the county, and we're just here asking some hard questions. You made a very good point. The ORC does not define fair. Have you defined fair in your lease?
I think.
Is it just a junior fair?
So what we want to see is what you see up here. I mean, this is the vision that the community, that
But that doesn't answer the question.
it preserves an area. There's an area here.
We haven't defined what fair means.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
the master plan defines an area for like the carnival and the, you know, what you consider the non-fair. So we have allocated or identified within this plan space for what we hope to be a, you know, even an improved version of a fair. But we can only get there with a lease with the Ag Society, right? I mean, that does require a relationship between the city and the Ag Society, but certainly in our plan, in our vision, it includes all of that.
Which is hard to do when you don't have cooperation from the horsemen. If you're people who attend the fair every year, that parking is on that track.
So
Those events are on that end.
right, you're absolutely
And
right.
so if that's not part of it, it's hard to sit here and hear you say, yes, we're preserving it, but no, because those are going to be two separate things and they don't want to work together. I mean, do you see how these two ends don't meet? And so,
Let me just answer it, because that is a good question. The harness horseman lease agreement requires that they make that whole infield and track area available for fair. So that is a stipulation within their lease agreement that, that it continues, you know. The tractor pulls that Councilmember Cope likes so much. So,
Where's the
yeah,
Derby gonna go?
the Derby, yeah, so that, again, you know.
Vision for trying to build a grandstand again.
Yeah.
It's like,
So,
I think it's also important to know that the contract negotiations are confidential because it's a contract, you know, that's typical. But once it's complete, that's public information.
We voted on it.
And also, when we have this, the public open house, you can see a lot of it. So like Beth has been there, a lot of us from council, people from Ag Society, Horsemen, you can tell me all the entities. There's lots of entities that have been at the meeting, so we can talk about it and lay things out and say, okay, over here would be a good area for food, over here would be a good area for games, over here would be a good area for this. We don't know. We don't do that because we said, hey, those of you that have done that, where do you think would be good for that? Because that is important to us and we want it to be done in a proper way. But ultimately, those will be conversations we would have together, and we as a city don't want to run a fair. We want the Ag Society to be able to run the fair because that's their area. So we want to be able to do the things that we're good at. But also, the answering questions about the other things that have been happening on the property thus far, you know, we can't do that because it's never been our responsibility, you know, and that's really unfortunate. People think it is because it's in the city, that's another issue, but we're not. And, you know, the Ag Society, the horsemen, the commissioners, all of them have to answer those things and explain that stuff. But we've just been over here on this side extending a hand and saying, okay, looks like the problem, what can we do to fix it? Okay, we're over here. And then we have to wait for people to come to us and finish those conversations. But we want that information to be as public as possible too, because, you know, it affects everybody, and we would prefer that people have accurate information, but some of it isn't for us to share too.
so I think you bring up a very valid point, right? That transparency is what everybody's looking for. So right now, the Agricultural Society, those financials go to the state. Have you brought that up? The audit from last year, still not available, still not finished, still don't have those numbers. So agricultural societies will continue to report to the state. So how are you going to handle that being?
So one of the requirements in our proposed lease agreement with the Ag Society is that there's an annual financial review between the city and the Ag Society. So if your question is just kind of how is the city going to be connected with that, or?
You can ask for a financial review, but when information is not available or record keeping or what you will, I mean, historically, again, in public record, we're talking about blank checks that were signed. You don't know what it's for. I mean, you can have an agreement to have.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a condition of the lease. And if we don't follow conditions on our end, the lease obviously can be invalidated and same on their end, so.
And who pays? And that's my point. And that's where I'm getting to all of this. Who pays? At the end of the day, it's a short-term decision that can have long-term implications for our youth of the county, not just Lebanon. And so it's important to keep that in mind when we make a decision.
Yep, and I think we definitely have focused on the youth in terms of, I think everybody I've heard wants that same thing. I mean, I think we all understand the importance that 4-H provides. Greg Meyer with the OSU Extension Office has been part of the committee, obviously. He's been involved, but yeah. Any other questions? I don't want to.
Well, just,
Yeah.
I'm a 4-H parent, but also I live in the city, so like I understand the both like struggles. I wanted to survive, but I also don't want to pay more taxes for it, you know what I mean? Like, so if the county right now doesn't want to pay for it, then how is the city going to pay for it?
Yeah, so we've got, we are working on kind of a funding plan, and I do want to point out, because I say this about roads, it's kind of taken a long time to get to a condition, where our roads were at a few years ago, and it's going to take some time to dig out. So I don't want to think that the city can come in and just wave a magic wand and make everything happen immediately. But what I can tell you is we're committed to changing that course, kind of like what we've done with our roads. We're committed to making those improvements every year that kind of get us going in the right direction. So there have been some very high-level conversations with the county about how can we work together to provide kind of a funding surge to do what needs to be done up here. And so.
Have they been responsive to that?
Yeah. The conversations that I have, I would answer that as yes. Obviously, there's no commitments, there's nothing, but it's how do we move the needle? And it's going to take money. I mean, it's going to take money. We're good at getting grants. That's part of the equation. But we also have non-tax sources, income tax, taxes you pay sources that we feel like we can bring to the table to help. We have our own electric utility. We own the utilities up there, right? So I think through a cooperation, we have the resources to start moving the needle up there.
So you're saying like we will be supported by the taxpayers?
No, I'm saying there's opportunities to work together. There's opportunities for non-taxpayer revenue sources that we have access to work on it.
And then one last comment about like the renovating additions and stuff like that. Now, and don't get me wrong, I love Lebanon. I think you've done a really great job doing Lebanon and all the council members. I think it's been great. I still live here. If I didn't think it was great, I would be gone by now. But like we have crooked roads and potholes after just 3 months, and then cracks in the sidewalk. How can we trust you to build, and even Catch Fire Pizza, where that location was, the plans that you presented in the beginning, like, look, this is what it's going to be. It was beautiful. I'm like, oh, I want to spend my days there. And what we got was kind of disgusting. I don't ever visit that place and spend my money there.
I mean, I don't think the plan originally, if you look at the development agreement, that was all legislated, it's all in there. I think the renderings that were part of the approved ordinance are very similar to what got built. I understand some people like it and some don't, but I don't think they did not change course completely on that project. But I mean, contractors, there's issue. We have.
Yeah, and I understand that, so I totally understand that. But my fear is that you come in and you make something and then it's going to crack in 3 months.
I guess what I would say is we're going to be much more engaged in the property and management of the property to try to avoid those situations and where we're at right now.
And I guess I would argue the other side of that, because I live on a street that recently got redone, and I felt like the city was very open about when they came and redid the curbs and redid the driveway, because it was a lot. And they gave us the option as homeowners to replace the sidewalk ourselves with our own contractor. We didn't trust what they were doing. And the Bowman Trail goes right to my backyard. But when I had issues, I called up here and you came to my door and said, okay, how can we work through this, and how can we make it fair and equitable? So I don't think there's ever been a time that I've not called the city and asked the question directly, that they've not been very open about what they were going to do to fix the problem I had. And it's just been, and I might have had to have called a couple of times, because I think you and I went back and forth in email multiple times about what's going to happen, how's this going to look, what are we going to do. but it was a lot of communication to get to the point where that project was done. And we had a similar project, Summit Street was done before Park, it was a very similar situation, and, you know, I didn't like it. I didn't like how it turned out, and I made phone calls, and it got fixed. So I think it's
Yeah,
just,
I've made phone calls and I've been visiting in person and I don't see any changes. But I understand that, I'm not like,
Well,
I
the
understand
concrete is
things take
getting
a long
replaced.
time. Like, I understand that, I'm not saying, but I'm just saying, I've made the calls and I get visited in person and it still is the same way. So don't assume that I haven't called and visited.
I'm not
So-
making that assumption, I'm just saying, they've been very open about that, so.
So there are some other projects we want to make sure we cover. Parkside Development, been talking about this for a few years. That's on the west side off of State Route 63. This is the ultimate, kind of full build-out concept plan that's going to take 10 plus years to get to. This is obviously a long-term project. But work has begun. Homes are getting built out there. They're kind of in that phase 1 home construction. And like Ben said, they will later this year be moving into the widening of State Route 63 that they're responsible for in front of the Parkside development. Any questions on that? Ray Rock, so this is another one that was recently approved by the city. They have not started construction yet. This is on Drake Road, across from the high school. It's 313 acres. It actually extends then all the way out to State Route 48 north of the junior high. It's a development that's being led by Dries Homes. They've partnered with Hensley Homes, which is a custom home builder. I want to stress, as Lebanon grows and kind of transitions into what is kind of considered the more rural edges of our town or into the township, we are pushing for lower density projects. So 35% of Ray Rock is dedicated as open space. If you look at the actual housing density on this property, it is actually less dense than some of the developments that you see out in the township. So while yes, it's 500 new lots, if what you look at in Shaker or Union Village, some of these developments that are not in the city but in the township, they're actually more dense than what the city's approved, and that was definitely a focus of city council, is to make sure that it's going to develop. This family had owned the farm for many years, and they were selling. It wasn't an if, it was we are selling, we are going to develop this. A sewer had been run through the property over 20 years ago to serve the high school. They had sewer access. So I think the city felt like it was in our best interest to make this part of the city, have it fall under kind of our standards and our zoning, so that we could control the density and control the quality of the development out there. So that'll likely move into the construction phase later this year. It again will be certainly a multi-year build out. Toll House Farms, you can see the homes being built. This is off of 123, kind of across from the Turk Creek Township Fire Station and office there. And they are moving into phase 2. Ultimately, it's going to be a 67 home site. There's some photos there of the actual homes that have been constructed. And then the acres, you may not be familiar with. This is on the kind of the southern end of our community off of Mason Moore Mill Grove Road. But this is again a low density. So the home sites, the lots are about 1 to 2.5 acres. So large lot, custom home builder that's building down there to meet a demand in the market, and he's gotten a good response. So the city's approach has again been to encourage diverse housing opportunities. So you have $1 million homes, and you have apartments that have been built, kind of behind Walmart to try to attract folks, from all demographics into our community. That's it on the residential side. Anything from I guess that's it on the development, both residential and commercial. Anything else before we kind of wrap it up? Okay. America 250, get into some fun stuff here. So we are planning, obviously, a big celebration for America 250. The main event will be July 3rd. That'll be kind of expanded events all through the day downtown. That will be, historically, we do the parade on that day as well. And then we'll transition up to Light Up Lebanon fireworks celebration up at Colonial Park West. Good activities, music, things for kids and whole families. A couple other neat things happening. The train is painting a locomotive kind of with the graphic that you see there, celebrating America 250, and they're going to be doing train rides downtown as part of it. So super excited about that. And then, yeah, just lots of fun patriotic themed events for whole families to enjoy on July 3rd. And then we're doing a few other events that we have planned throughout the month of July. So more to follow, but it should be a great event. And then Lebanon does events, right? So we got the full range of downtown events again this year. We kind of track this a bit, and there were I think 1.7 million visits to downtown Lebanon last year. So it's great for our small businesses and for our community.
And the fireworks are going to be...
The fireworks are going to be expanded, yes. So we're partnering with Turtle Creek Township. They're helping fund the fireworks celebration this year, so that allows us to ramp them up again a bit, so it should be good. So is there anything that we haven't covered? I know it went a little longer than we thought, but it's good that we had this discussion. Just want to make sure all questions are answered before you guys leave.
My only follow-up would be the possibility of maybe using the event center, what we have as a warming center.
Yeah.
If that's something that could be looked into sooner than later. Some things can wait, some things can't. So if there's a good way I can follow up or reach out, I'm happy to do work. I'm one of these, I'll put my money where my mouth is. I'll roll up my sleeves and do what it takes.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. Hopefully we get to the point where the city owns it and we can be involved in some of those decisions. So, but certainly pass that along to the county at this point since they own it, that feedback.
It's just such a great location.
Yeah.
Like I said, by the time you walk to the Y, for somebody like me, I couldn't even make it to the Y.
Yeah.
I'm going to keel over, I'm going to get warm at that point because the EMT's coming to get me. But,
all right, well, thank you all for coming tonight. Appreciate it.